After bringing my cousin Jack back to his rooming house, I watch him disappear into the grungy structure, a pang of guilt gnawing at my insides. I know I've offered him a lifeline, but at what cost? As I turn away, the dim glow of the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, promising horror lurking in the depths of the city. My smartphone buzzes in my pocket, shattering the silence like a thunderclap in the dead of night. With a trembling hand, I retrieve it, my heart sinking as I see the caller ID, King Bixby. With a heavy sigh, I answer the call, bracing myself for the inevitable. "Knox!" Bixby's voice booms through the line, his tone harsh and as cold as the grave. "I need you back at Monstrous. We've got 3 orders that need to be delivered within 3 hours, and I'm short of drivers." My stomach churns at the thought of returning to the restaurant, but I know better than to defy Bixby's orders. He rarely takes no for an answer. I rev the engine of my truck and peel out into the night, the streets blurring together in a dizzying whirl of motion. As I pull up into the restaurant parking lot, the air hangs heavy with anticipation, a palpable tension crackling in the darkness. Bixby emerges from the shadows, his tight business suit clinging to his towering, hulking figure, a nasty vertical scar displayed down his left cheek, and his dark eyes gleaming with an intensity that sends shivers down my spine and makes me feel like a kid, even though we are only a few years apart in age. I'm a man, by God, but this man has seen and been through things. Terrible things. He told me about a few of them when I first started working for him, and I find it weird that I cannot stop being awestruck by his presence to this day. We are not pals or friends, but Bixby is definitely someone you want on your side rather than against you. "Knox!" he barks, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "We've got new customers. You'll be delivering these orders tonight." He holds out a crumpled invoice to me, which has crude, hand-drawn maps on the back of it to help me locate our newcomers. I carefully study the maps under the dim glow of the restaurant's interior lighting. "Lee will bring the orders out." With a curt nod to Bixby, I watch as our cryptid cook, Lee, emerges from the depths of the restaurant from a side door, his twisted, loping form silhouetted against the flickering lights of Sin City's tourist traps. He pulls a cart laden with 6 large white buckets, each one adorned with a biohazard sticker. I shove the paperwork in my back pocket and I begin picking up the containers, placing them in the flatbed of my truck. The contents slosh in a sickening manner. The surfaces of the buckets are slick with an unknown green substance that sends a shiver down my spine. Hopefully, I will be able to hose all traces of this nasty slop out of my truck bed when I return home. I swallow hard as Lee helps me load the order, the weight of the containers a tangible reminder of the horrors that await me in the darkness. With a silent prayer, I climb behind the wheel and gun the engine, the roar of the truck drowning out the pounding of my heart. It's been 15 years at this job, and this dread never gets old. The fear that grips me. I press on, driven by a sense of duty and obligation to Bixby and his warped enterprise. While Bixby can be very gruff and demanding at times, he definitely makes up for it by being extremely generous with the proceeds of his Area 51 contract. His holiday bonuses are big enough to buy a new car, and I have no idea what his financial status is exactly. But he sure doesn't seem to need money like the rest of us. He gave me a job when I was freshly released from prison and living in the Vegas tunnels. Back then, I didn't have a lick of ID on me, and I couldn't even sell bottled water on Fremont Street without risking arrest and violating my parole. Bixby helped me get all of my legal documents together. He got the parole board off of my back through some powerful government connections he has. He put me up in a nice motel room for a full year. And he even let me use one of the restaurant's service trucks until I was able to buy my own ride. So money can certainly bind one to untenable situations and people. As I approach the first delivery location, the air grows thick with anticipation, a palpable sense of dread hanging heavy in the night. The address leads me to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, its rusted doors creaking ominously in the wind. I pull up alongside the front of the building and place my vehicle in park, reaching over to the glove compartment for my 10mm Glock 29, 4 magazines, and a headlamp. I place the handgun in my shoulder holster and the mags in my left inside bomber jacket pocket. My smartphone is in my right inside pocket. I place the headlamp over my baseball cap. With trembling hands, I don silicone gloves before hopping out of the truck to retrieve my handcart and the order. I carefully pull 2 5-gallon buckets from the back of the truck. With a deep breath, I reach up to turn on the headlamp, then I slowly push open the factory doors with the cart and venture into the darkness. My senses are on high alert for any signs of danger. The stench hits me like a wave, a putrid mixture of decay and rot that threaten to overwhelm me. But I press on, my resolve unwavering in the face of the unknown. As I navigate the maze of corridors in the building, I can hear movement echoing in the darkness, a sinister symphony of whispers that never ceases to unnerve me. With each step, the darkness seems to grow denser, suffocating in its intensity, threatening to swallow me whole. Finally, I reach the designated drop-off point, a dimly lit chamber shrouded in shadows. I set the containers onto the concrete floor and I peel off the lids. The sight that greets me is enough to turn my stomach. Huge cow's eyes stare back at me as they float in what looks like a concoction of unidentified goo, bile, and salsa verde. The first customer emerges from the shadows, a towering figure with skin like cracked leather and eyes that gleam with a predatory hunger. He reaches for the containers with colossal gnarled hands, his fingers curling around the entirety of the buckets with a sickening squelch. Then, as if he were holding shot glasses, he brings the containers one after the other to his impossibly wide mouth as he opens his maw like a garbage truck's compactor, tilts his gigantic head back and guzzles down the contents of each bucket, having thrown the empties to the ground with a loud clatter. He then glares at me in a menacing way, as if I were next on the menu, but he appears to immediately change his mind as he turns away from me and my headlamp, slipping back into the shadows, issuing a loud burp that smells of sulfuric acid and dead rats. But even as I recoil in disgust and revulsion, I know that my mission is far from over. With a steely determination, I move on to the next delivery location, each one more gruesome than the last. From abandoned warehouses to desolate alleyways, I bear witness to horrors beyond comprehension, each putrid container holding a new nightmare waiting to be unleashed. The second customer is a grotesque sight to behold, a twisted amalgamation of flesh and bone that seems to pulsate with a sickly glow, its limbs elongated and contorted, and its mouth stretched into a grotesque grin, filled with razor-sharp teeth. As it claims its container, a foul stench wafts from its gaping mouth, making my stomach churn with revulsion. Inside the container lay a rotten mass of flesh and bone, grotesquely twisted and contorted into unnatural shapes. The stench of decay fills the air, mingling with the sickly sweet scent of blood, bile, and honey. But it's my third customer that truly tests my resolve. As I approach the final delivery location, a sense of dread washes over me like a tidal wave. The figure that emerges from the darkness is a nightmare made flesh, its form shifting and writhing with every movement. Its eyes glow with a malevolent light, and its twisted limbs move with an unnatural grace as it reaches for the container with a clawed hand. "Is it as good as Plum Island's?" It asks me with a creepy, sinister voice. It moves towards me, sniffing the air, sniffing me. "Better," I say with a confident smile as I turn on my heel and hightail it out of there. One thing that I've learned as a monstrous delivery driver: it's never a good idea to linger and to get all chatty with our clientele. The less they know about you, the better. It's not unheard of for them to pay our delivery drivers an after-hours visit if they can catch a good imprint of us. I believe that most of them are gifted with the ability to track prey. While Bixby never fills us in on the particulars of our customers, it's always better to be safe than sorry. Each encounter leaves me sunken to my core, my mind reeling from the horrors I have witnessed, but it's nothing new. I should be used to it now, but I can never get used to it. When I lived in the tunnels, I had never seen such creatures, but I had heard tales from meth heads who claimed to have seen scary things further along in those airless, wet, dark spaces, in the remote passageways. I always figured that they were just delusional and messed up, but now I truly wonder. As I stagger through the front door of my dingy house, it begins to rain. The weight of the night presses down on me like a leaden shroud. I reach for an entire case of cold beer from my fridge, thirsty to forget the visceral nightmares that presently haunt me. Each bottle holds the promise of oblivion, and as I crack open the first one, the bitter taste of hops washes over me like a wave, drowning out the memories that threaten to consume me. Sloppy, grisly, crunching sounds of slurping and grunting and chewing and sucking. Squishy sounds. At last, as the first light of dawn paints the sky in hues of pink and gold, the rain stops and I feel the weight of the night beginning to lift. With a weary sigh, I stumble into my bed, the beer bottles scattered around me like fallen soldiers, and as I close my eyes, I pray for a moment of respite from this terrible existence. But even as sleep claims me, I know that it will be a short reprieve. With a heavy heart and a weary soul, I surrender to the embrace of oblivion, anticipating the return of these nightmares with the setting of the sun.